So good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another exciting program with us here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, I know we have a bunch of new audience members today. We are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Now, today's program is particularly special for a couple of reasons. Number one, it is in our entire month dedicated solely to incredible Canadian women in science and exploration. We have been all over the globe with Canadians and more explorers from here that have been doing just the coolest work to uncover the mysteries of the world and universe around us. If you want to check out all of those programs, head to our YouTube channel. Everything we do stays up there forever. It's also very exciting because we get the chance to continue our epic Explore Can series of events. So this is an initiative of Canadian Geographic Education in partnership with us and the Heritage Canada team. We've been featuring stories of Canada's history and exploration over the last 4 months, and we've got this huge blitz right now. We've got this program today, which I'll announce a little bit more of in a second. Tomorrow, we're joined live by Jill Heiner talking about World War II battles off our coast. And in just over a week, we've got George Karunas, the explorer, and Jordan Mallon, the paleontologist. So lots to explore. Check out that link below if you want to see some of the amazing programs on the go as part of this really special series. Now, before I introduce our speaker, I do want to note we have a Kahoot today. So between the talk and Q&A portions, if you want to join us in a little 4-question interactive fun quiz, put in that game pin, join us for a little bit of fun. It's a neat way to keep it extra interactive, and you get real bragging rights if you win. Now, without further ado, I'm so pleased to welcome back one of my very favorite speakers we've had over the last year, someone whose talk was so engaging that I always share hers as an example of what a great program on animals and wildlife can be. That is Siobhan Darlington. She is a BC cougar researcher. She gets to go into the mountains to study and track and understand one of the coolest predators on this planet, right in our backyard here in Canada. I'm not going to tell you any more about it because I don't want to steal her thunder, but I'm going to welcome in Siobhan to blow your mind with some great cougar stuff. Welcome again to the broadcast.
Thank you, Jesse. It's a pleasure to be here, everybody. Thank you for having me.
It's so nice to have you back. We've got an audience from around the world today, and I know you've got a lot to share with us. So if you want to dive on in, let's bring it up and get underway.
Awesome. Okay. Now, can you still hear me, Jesse?
I can hear you. We're good to go. Full screen. I can't wait.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you for the lovely introduction. It's a pleasure to be here back with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. My name is Siobhan Darlington, and I'm a wildlife scientist, and I'm based in Kelowna, British Columbia, at the University of British Columbia, Okanagan. So today I'll be talking about my research tracking cougars in BC. But before I get into a little bit about cougars and the work that I'm doing, I'll tell you a little bit about me and where I'm from. Okay, so where did it all get started? I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I grew up by the ocean and on the lake. But I always had a fascination with terrestrial animals. Favorite pet, my cat Tux was my favorite animal growing up, and I always loved cats as a kid. But I loved all kinds of animals, and I worked for many years working in conservation across the maritime provinces, studying different species, especially birds, and learning their behaviors and what kind of habitat, excuse me, we need to protect for those species. As I got older and I went to university to study biology, I moved out west to British Columbia, where I'm now studying cougars in BC. So I work on the Southern BC Cougar Project, and this is based out of Kelowna, but we have study areas across the interior of the province. So this project is multi-collaborative. We work with all kinds of different nonprofit organizations and government, universities, First Nations groups, and local community members. And this collaborative effort allows us to try to understand cougar behavior better and learn about the populations so that we can better protect them here in British Columbia. Okay, so to tell you a bit about cougars, many of you probably know cougars by the name mountain lion, but they actually have many different names. They have over 40 English names, 25 North American Indigenous names, and 18 South American Indigenous names. And some of those names include mountain lion, puma, panther, catamount or ghost cat, mountain screamer, or if you're French Canadian, couguar, or if you're Brazilian, couguar guarana. So that's the origin of the name cougar. And the reason why cougars have so many different names is because they're widely distributed. Cougars are the widest ranging terrestrial carnivore across the Western Hemisphere. They live all the way from the northern part of Canada and the southern Yukon, all the way to Patagonia, Argentina. So they live in a wide array of habitat types. They live in deserts, mountain environments. They live on the coast in BC as well. And they're very adaptive. They even used to live in areas in the east, where I'm from in Nova Scotia. We used to have cougars about 150 to 200 years ago. But cougars were removed from the majority of the eastern part of North America because people were so afraid of them. But studying cougars, you start to realize that cougars are more afraid of us than we are of them. Okay, but cougars are really resilient, and we've started to see cougars moving back east and taking back that habitat that they used to live in. A couple of quick cougar facts for you, for those of you who don't know. Cougars live to be about 8 to 13 years old in the wild. If they live in a zoo, they can live up to close to 20 years old, more like a domestic house cat. So a lot of what I've learned about cougars over the last 3 years is that they're a lot like your regular cat, just bigger, and they live in the wild. They have 30 teeth, so that's a lot of teeth, and their canines are 2.5 to 3 centimeters in length. And I don't know if you guys can see me. Jesse, can you see me on the screen at all?
We sure can. You're in the bottom, and I'll make you big whenever we want to highlight some cool props and stuff.
Yeah, I have props. So I brought with me, I didn't bring a skull with me today, but I do have a cougar canine. And hopefully you guys can see this. So more than half of this tooth is what's inside the cougar's gums. And then about from right here is what's exposed for their canine. So you can see a cougar tooth is pretty big. Okay. So females weigh about 80 to 120 pounds. Males are bigger than females, and they're 120 to 180 pounds when they're fully grown adults. Females have litters of 1 to 4 kittens, and the average is 2 to 3. And the kittens stay with their moms for up to 2 years. So the mothers might have a litter every year or every 2 years, and they're very good at caring for their young. The moms take the kittens with them everywhere they go for 2 years until they're ready to go out on their own and find their own territory. Kittens also usually lose their spots by the time they're 9 months. So when they're born with all these little spots to help them camouflage against the ground. And that's so that they're better protected and other animals can't see them very well. When they're 9 months old, those spots start to disappear and they look more like adults. So cougars are territorial animals. They have really big territories that they defend. Males usually have bigger territories than females. Males overlap multiple females within their territory so that they can mate with several different females. We do have females in our city that have really big territories, bigger than some males. In this case, I have our female C10. Her name is Christian. And she has a really big territory that covers all the way across one of our study areas almost. But what happens is this cougar lives in the north in the summer months and she goes down south in the winter. So kind of like people, they can move around certain times of the year. Cougars are also ambush hunters and they're active at nighttime. So they're generalist predators. They eat lots of different prey species, but just like your cat at home, they're really sneaky. They like to sneak up on their prey and hide under cover and then pounce at short distances. They do this a lot of the time at night because they have really good night vision, and with the darkness is really good at hiding their where they are from their prey. To show you a little bit about what cougars eat, I have a deer here in this example, but they have this broad diet, and that includes many large herbivores. So we think about a cougar's food web. We think of cougars as these apex predators on the landscape, and they eat a lot of deer and elk and moose as well. So these big herbivore species that overlap in their habitat, and those herbivores eat a lot of plants. But cougars don't just eat ungulates or herbivores. Like, they eat these other smaller critters. Beavers, porcupine, and snowshoe hares make up a good portion of cougar diet, about 20% of the food that they eat. So cougars eat a large variety of things. They tend to eat whatever they can find. But cougars also share the landscape with lots of other animals. They're not the only apex predator out there, and they're not the only ones that like to eat this kind of food. So cougars eat this kind of prey, but they're also competing with wolves, black bears and grizzly bears, coyotes, and Canada lynx as well for access to some of these food items. And another cool thing about cougars is that we call them ecosystem engineers. And that means that cougars are providing a service to the environment. And that service is that they're killing these animals and they don't eat all of it. So because cougars are solitary predators, they tend to hunt and kill a deer or eat it, and they leave a lot behind. So they don't necessarily eat everything that's on their plate. Their eyes are bigger than their belly. So what happens is when cougars eat these animals and there's lots left over, these other animals like wolves and black bears and coyotes and even birds of prey will come in and scavenge the rest of the cougar's dinner. And they'll eat the rest of the food that is left behind. So cougars have this complex food web where they're interacting directly or indirectly with lots of different animals. And we have to remember that we are also a part of this food web too, because we affect all these different stages of the food web. People are out in the environment, recreating or hunting or changing the landscape. So it's important to remember that we also have an important influence on this food web. Okay, bringing us to cougars in British Columbia. So for our study, we're studying almost 50, so 49 cougars so far in the last 3 years to understand cougar behavior, their diet, where they're living, and where they reproduce. I have a couple of key research questions as a scientist. Our team is investigating what cougars are eating and where they eat them. And we also want to know which uninvited animals, the scavengers, are coming into cougars' leftovers and eating the rest of the dinner. So before I can go learn what cougars are eating, I have to first catch a cougar. And how do you do that? Well, we have to use specialized equipment and skills to go out and track cougars. We do this by going out in the backcountry in the mountains in the winter months when there's lots of snow on the ground, and we snowmobile through all these different roads. And what we do is on the snowmobile, we look for cougar trucks crossing the road. So we have our eyes on the ground, we drive really slow. It's not very exciting when you're driving, 2 kilometers an hour, but you're looking for cougar tracks across the road, and there's lots of other tracks out there. So we see deer tracks, we see wolf tracks, moose as well, but we have to decide, are these cougar tracks? And we can tell because cougars have very distinctive tracks. They're a certain size, they have 3 lobes across the bottom, and very round toes. Another cool thing about cougar tracks is that they have retractable claws, so we don't see the claw marks most of the time when they leave footprints. And you can see on the picture on the right, the cougar prints are kind of like punching through the snow, and there's not a big trail between the footprints. So when we see these cougar prints, we bring in trained hounds, and the hounds will sniff out the cougar scent in the tracks and follow the tracks until they locate a cougar. So we find the cougar and we put them to sleep. And this is for just about an hour while we take some measurements and we put a GPS collar on it. So if any of you have used a GPS before to navigate, or your parents have one in their car, you probably know that it connects to satellites and it connects with your location on the land. For cougars, we have these GPS collars, and they look kind of big, if you can see on the screen, but they're not very heavy. So these collars are really durable. Cougars take down really big animals, so the collars have to be super durable. Now, there's a battery component here and a computer component here. And what this does is once the cougar is wearing this collar, it transmits a location or a point every 2 hours. So we can actually track cougars from our phones or on our computer. So when we put the collar on, we also put a little earring in their ear, and we put a number on the collar as well, so we can see it clearly on pictures that are taken of the cougar, and we take measurements as well. One thing we do too is we age cougars, and one cool thing about aging cougars is you can do it from their teeth. So in this example here on the left, we see a cougar who's pretty young. It's 1.5 years old, and the teeth are really white and look really good. They don't need to go to the dentist. Things are looking good. The teeth are in good shape. The picture in the middle shows a cougar that's about 5 years old, and you can see there's a lot of yellow staining on those teeth, but the teeth are still in pretty good shape. As we move to the picture on the right, this much older cougar, about 9 years old, has a canine that's rotting, they're broken, and they're super, super yellow. So we can see that cougar has been around a long time and has taken down a lot of big animals. Over time, their teeth start to wear down. Okay, so I talked about how the collars work sending GPS signals, but we also have to be able to track cougars when we're out in the field. And we use the GPS data, and you can see this picture on the bottom right. That's a track of GPS locations over time. And some of these areas, you can see there's a whole bunch of points in one spot. And what that means is the cougar is probably eating something because it's been in one area for a couple of days. So we have points piling up in one spot, and we want to go check out what's there. So we use the locations from the GPS to see, okay, cougar's been there for a couple of days. Maybe there's a deer there. We'll go check it out. And then we go in the field and we have to manually track the cougars so that we know if they're still at the site or not. And that's for our safety as well. We always go in groups of 2 or 3 people, and we track to see if the cougar is still feeding while we show up and investigate. So if you can make me big on the screen, I'll just show you guys quickly how the tracking equipment works that I have in the pictures. So hopefully you can see this. So this is my handy dandy antenna, and this is my cougar tracker. So each collar has a GPS signal and a radio frequency. So each collar has a special frequency, and I can program the collar frequency into my receiver. So that's this device here. So it's pretty small, and I can carry it out with me when I'm hiking. So let's say there's a cougar out in the woods in this direction over here. I'm going to put the collar there, but normally a cougar would be a little further away when I'm in the field. But I can turn on my receiver, and hopefully you guys can hear that beeping sound. So what happens is when I point my antenna toward where the cougar is, it gets louder. When I point it further away, the other direction, it gets quieter. So I know when I'm scanning, wherever the sound is loudest, that's where the cougar is. So that's how the manual tracking works when we're in the field. Okay. And hopefully you can see most of that antenna. It's a little big. All right. So let's say I'm in the field, I'm going with my team, we've tracked the cougar, we know it's not at the site that we're heading to, but we want to investigate what we find there. In the winter time, we do this year round, but in the winter, we'll often see cougar tracks when we arrive at the site. And you can see this track here, the size of it, we know it's a cougar track, and there's a bit of snow in it. So the cougar was probably there a day ago or so. On the left is a cougar bed that we found. So we're searching, we're looking around the trees and on the ground, and we see cougar prints going in and out of this, what we call a bed site. And this is where the cougar is actually sleeping while it's feeding. So cougars will fall asleep close to where their food is sometimes, and other times they'll fall asleep further away. But in this case, this was only a few meters away from where we found a carcass. And the cougar had been sleeping in this area for a long time, so much that the cougar's warm body melted the snow underneath it. And you can clearly see where it melted all the way down to the ground. This is where a cougar was sleeping. So this is some photos of some different sites here. The one on the top right is the same site I just showed you, and we found a big moose carcass there. But what we do is when we arrive, we look around everywhere and we look for signs that there's something dead that the cougar ate. And what cougars do is they cache their prey. And that means they cover it up with debris and they hide it from all those other scavengers I talked about that want to come in and steal their food. Well, cougars have to hide it while they're still hungry and they're still eating. They don't want these other animals to come in just yet. So cougars will scrape things over just like a cat in a litter box. They cover everything up. And when they are ready to eat, they'll go in and eat and cover it back. So we'll go in and look for a covered up carcass that we know was killed by the cougar, and we'll collect some samples. We also put up a trail camera. So if any of you have ever seen a remote camera before in wildlife research, there are these guys here. So there's lots of different models you can use, but what they do is they take pictures when there's motion in front of the camera. So they go up against a tree here, and this one is really nice. It has a screen, so we can set it up quickly and easily, and we can also view all the photos that are on it. And we set it up for about 30 days, and we face it towards where the carcass is so that we can capture pictures of not just the cougar eating, but all the other animals that come in and take the food. That's the kind of data that we want to collect in our study. So we leave the cameras up for 30 days, and then we skedaddle, and the cougar will come back and finish eating. So to show you a bit about what we found so far in our research, what I mentioned is that we want to know what cougars are eating and where they're eating them. And we have 3 study areas that we work in, from west to east, across the southern part of British Columbia. And what we found so far is on this map, you can see each circle represents a different cougar that we've studied. And the pie chart is the different food items that we found going to all of their different sites. And in the West Okanagan, the farthest west in our study system, we've mainly found mule deer and moose at our cougar kill sites. So that's the main things that they've been eating. As we move further east, we've seen more whitetail in the diet. And then in the far east, white-tailed deer and elk. So we actually have different prey composition or different species of prey that we're finding most often in cougar diet here. And these are some of the pictures we found by putting those cameras up and detecting other animals coming into the kills. So we've seen many black bears come out when it's not wintertime, and they've come out of hibernation. There are many black bears that come in, they're hungry, it's been a long winter, and they'll come in and take a lot of the cougar's dinner that's left over. We have gray wolves that come in and feed on them, as well as coyotes. And we also have deer and moose that come in and just kind of check it out. They don't eat the carcasses, but they do come in and investigate. They're just curious. We do have lots of birds of prey too, like golden eagles that'll come in and take big chunks away. This one in the middle on the bottom is an American badger, which is a species at risk in BC. So there are very few of those animals left in the province, and we were lucky to actually detect one at one of our cougar sites. Sometimes we also detect other cougars. So this is a collared cougar coming back to her meal in the top left, but we've also had other cougars that we didn't know about. So we don't have all the cougars collared. That would be very hard to do. There are lots of other cougars out there, and they do overlap in their territories, especially if they're females. So we do often see other groups of females coming into these sites, and some of them even have kittens with them. And that brings me to our kitten monitoring program. So this is another area of research that we're doing here on the Cougar Project, and that's to understand where cougars give birth and how many young they have and how long the young live for. So to do that, we use the same kind of approach as what I talked about, investigating the GPS data for those cougar kill sites where they're eating. We look at areas where cougar females are spending a lot of time in one area, and not just a couple of days. They're spending weeks in one spot. So when that happens, we think, okay, there's probably kittens there. She's given birth, because they really care for their young when they're really small, and they spend a lot of time nursing them. So what we do is we use our handy dandy tracker, and we go out in the field and we look for a den. And the dens are usually made up of lots of woody debris. So fallen over logs and branches everywhere. In this case, it was a bunch of deadfall and we can go in and see that there are kittens there. So what we do is we go in groups of 4 people, we make lots of noise, we clap, we yell, and the mom will move away. So if someone is on cougar tracking duty, they make sure they know where mom is, and the rest of us will go in and we'll locate any kittens that were born so we can take some measurements. And we wait to do this until they're about 4 weeks old. That way they're big enough that we can put little earrings in their ears. And that helps us monitor their progress over time. So we put the kittens in little burlap sacks to keep them nice and quiet when we pick them up. And then we put these earrings in, we take their weight, and we learn if they're a male or female. We also put cameras up, like I mentioned before. So the trail cameras will also go up facing the cougar den site, and we'll get videos of the kittens to make sure that they're okay after we've left. So this is a video of 2 kittens that we tagged after we left the site. And these kittens are called Winnie and Fred, and they're both 2 males. In the bottom right picture, this is a photo of Winnie, so one of the male cougars with the red ear tag in that picture right beside it. So this is Winnie when he was 6 months old. And we got that picture from putting up a camera at his mom's kills, and she was bringing Winnie in with Fred to go find something to eat and to feed. Okay, so I just have a couple of cool videos of us releasing the kittens and kind of some footage of kittens after that. Everyone likes to see kittens. So I'll just show you guys a couple of videos, and I'll just point out too, red in black, that we have to wear really thick gloves. And that's because kittens have really sharp claws. And an important thing too is when we release kittens back in the wild, we put them back exactly where we found them.
Greatest job ever, by the way.
What's that?
This is the greatest job ever. Like that's the peak biologist joy.
I know, I peaked. I don't know where I'm going from here, Jesse. Okay, so that's releasing 2 kittens back into their den. Now this video is one we got of a female returning to the den, and she picked up her kittens and moved them to a different location. Cougars will move den sites quite a bit while their kittens are young to keep them better protected. So when they pick them up, they actually carry them in their mouths some of the time. So you can see this footage. So they just pick them up right by the scruff of the neck. And in some cases, so say she has too many kittens to carry. In this case, we went in and tagged 2 kittens we found at a den. And the cameras are actually really helpful for us because sometimes we miss a kitten and we actually want to get accurate estimates of how many kittens were born, but they're very elusive and hard to find sometimes. And in this case, we learned from the camera footage that there was a 3rd kitten we didn't know about. So I'll show you this footage of a female with her 3 kittens, and only 2 of them have earrings. You'll also see how clumsy kittens can be. Well, he's okay. You can see that little one in the background with no ear tag popping out. I was very excited when I saw that there was a 3rd kitten. And just to show you the progress on these 3 kittens, so that footage is from August this summer. That's when we went in to tag the kittens, and now they're about 6 months old or so. And this footage is from 2 weeks ago. So you can see that all three of them are still doing really well. They look healthy and they're all together. So we keep an eye on how the kittens are progressing over time to see if they're all still alive and still together and how many there are. Okay. So in conclusion, everybody, so in studying cougars, we really want to understand their behavior better. We want to learn what they're eating because it's important for protecting the habitat that they live in. And we also want to know where they're reproducing and if there are any threats to the survival of their young. So this research really helps us make sure that we're doing the best we can to conserve cougar populations here in British Columbia and providing some really necessary science to understand some of these things. Okay. And I just want to thank all of our project team, funders, volunteers, and partners. It takes a small army to go out and visit all of the different sites. Cougars kill animals about once a week, one deer a week. So that's a lot over the last 3 years. We have a whole big team of people and students who have helped us over time. So a huge thank you to everybody. And thank you to Explore by the Seat of Your Pants and Canadian Geographic Education for having me here today. And I'll just leave this up for questions.
Yes. Well, you can come out of that if you want to see us again, have a bit of a conversation, but I'll make sure all our students have those links at the end too. So if you want to follow up with Siobhan, ask any additional questions, I've got your website up as a little banner I can bring up as well. But we are going to start by going into a Kahoot, and then we're going to go to all our live classes. Miss Gonzalez's class, particularly, I'm glad you guys are able to make it today. Way to go. So we'll come to you guys in just a sec. But first, we're going to do our little quiz together. 4 questions, have a little bit of fun. If you want to go to kahoot.it, type in this game pin. We'd love to have you participate. Now, you don't win anything, but you do win Siobhan and I's everlasting respect for having paid extra attention to her presentation, okay? So feel free to come on in. There's so many of you already pouring in. I kind of hope someone with a cougar name wins. That would be very fitting. It's never happened yet where a creature that we've covered has won the Kahoot, but we're going to get underway. The faster you answer, the more points you get. You can also play along in your class if you don't want to go online. Here we go with question number 1. Now, there might be more than one answer for some of these questions, so make sure you pay attention to how it goes. All right, our quiz with a multi-select, so more than one. Which of these countries do cougars live in? We had a map at the beginning. Now, Argentina, Canada, Mexico, or South Africa? Might be more than one. I'm hoping you're all going to get Canada. We have been talking about that for 30 minutes now. But any others? Ooh, people are nervous in this one. We've freaked them out. What's that map? Where's the map? Oh, I forget what it looked like. 4 of you got your answers in. So it is 3 of the 4. We've got South Africa is not one of the countries in which they live because they are all over North and South America. Stellar Meerkat takes our lead to begin. And we'll head into question 2 together. Tail between our legs, shall we say, Siobhan. Which of these are other names for cougars? You highlighted this at the beginning, too. Puma, mountain lion, panther, or tiger. Multiple of these are right. Maybe 1 or 2 are wrong. Maybe 1's wrong. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they're all right. We don't know. But more answers coming in. Very good. All right. Let's see, 22 answers in. Mountain lion, puma, and panther. So in Florida, it's a Florida panther. Are they called panther elsewhere other than that too, or do you know?
Mainly Florida panther, yeah.
But not tiger. We're not a tiger. We get a lion in there. All right, change our leaderboard entirely. Cougar tracking involves radio transmitters. True or false? We did bring this into the broadcast and highlight it for a while, so we're fingers crossed. So many great classes, by the way. If you are a class in the background, please do turn on your mics, turn on your cameras. I'll know you're ready for questions that way, and I'll be coming to you guys in just a second. Almost 40 of you in. And the answer is yes, of course. We had the radio transmitter in. Very, very good. Let's see. Clever Macaw. The leaderboard stayed almost the same. Clever Macaw. Going into our final question. True or false? You should be terrified of cougars every time you go out walking. If you're in BC or Ontario or Argentina or Mexico, just terrified of cougars at all times, like Siobhan, right? What do we think? Maybe, I don't know. Not necessarily. What are our answers? Nice job, guys. Anyone on YouTube that wants to chime in the chat too, please do. And I will note again, this is our very special series in conjunction with Canadian Geographic and Heritage Canada. Our answer, of course, is false. You don't need to be terrified of cougars, right, Siobhan? They're not.
That's right.
All right, Stellar Meerkats in third, Genius Camels in second. Did our leaderboard stay the same to the final question? Let us know who you are of these in the chat, by the way. We'd love to hear you. Clever Macaw takes it with a victory. Nicely done. We're going to head to Miss Gonzalez's class, who made special changes in their schedule to accommodate this today. So I'm really happy to have them with us. Welcome in, 3-4s. Hi. Hi.
Hi, can you hear us?
Oh, yeah, you're good. Yeah. Do you have a question for us?
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Do you want me to take a question from one of the students?
Please do. Come on up.
Okay. Let's see who can go ahead. Let's see. Hold on. I can't even see from down here. Go ahead, Lucas. What's your question? Besides North America and South America, do cougars live
Anywhere else? Are they outside of North and South America, Siobhan?
No, so they're just in the Western Hemisphere from the southern Yukon all the way down to Patagonia, but not on other continents.
Yeah, but they're an incredibly wide-ranging cat. Like their range dwarfs that of like a lion or a tiger. I mean, leopards are the only thing that might be comparable, where it's just a huge swath of the planet. So very, very diverse. Thanks, Ms. Gonzalez's class. Riverbend Colony School, we're going to head to Manitoba. If you guys have a question for us, come on in.
Do you guys have a question? Do you guys want to? Well, come up here. Do you guys have a question? Sorry, I can't turn it.
All good. No, come on up.
I have a question.
Please.
So if you see a mom that gets hurt and her kittens are out there, would you help her kittens, or would you not intervene?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we don't intervene on any of the natural behavior of cougars. That's the kind of data we want to collect. Unfortunately, if anything happened to mom and something bad happened to the kittens, that's a reflection of the larger population. So we have to document that as scientists, and we can't intervene on the study, unfortunately.
It's a question we don't get very often. It's a bit of a challenging one, and I'm really glad we got it. So thanks, Riverbend Colony. Miss Becker's class, we're going to head to San Diego, where we all wish we were right now amidst the midwinter. Welcome in, guys. Unmute your mic.
What would happen to the food chain if jaguars went extinct?
Yes, we lost the carnivores or cougars.
What would happen to the food chain? So that's a great question. So the main source of mortality for deer is often predators eating them, right? So if we remove all the predators and there's none left, then those animals, well, they don't die very much. So we have a lot of deer. Deer give birth to at least 2 fawns every year. The population starts to grow. And we've seen this in places in the eastern US where we have deer rampant everywhere because there are no predators anymore in some communities. So that means that the herbivores, they just do really, really well. And sometimes there's way too many of them.
One of my favorite things in provincial and national parks in Canada is they take areas and they fence them off to show what would happen if deer don't get in. And it's amazing. It's like a lush tropical rainforest because deer clear so much. So when you lack those predators, you end up with these really out of balance ecosystems. So what a great question. Thanks, Ms. Becker's class. St. Cecile, Ms. Redson's class, if you guys want to unmute your mic, I'm going to come to your question live. And then Le Marchand, I'll come to you guys next. And if you want to turn on your devices, you're good to go. But St. Cecile, hi.
Yeah.
Hi. I had a question. How much do you get paid doing this job?
How much are you, Siobhan?
Wow. Well, not as much as I should, but that's a good question. I'm a student, and students do get paid to study for their research. So you can make money doing what you love, but you won't become a millionaire. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, and that's really actually. I really like highlighting that for students that, you know, you finish grade 12, you're not being paid to be a student right now, you get into your early degrees, but when you get to the PhD level, you're starting to contribute to actual science. Like you are beyond just learning, and you're starting to actually lead to something where people will think about you as being the expert. And so students that are at the PhD level do get paid. They teach courses, but not for the. That is the first time we've ever got a direct question on that ever in 1,300 broadcasts. So thank you, St. Cecile, for giving me something new. Le Marchand, if you guys want to let me know if you're good for questions, I can come to you in a second. You got to unmute your mic and turn on your camera, but I will go back to Ms. Gonzalez's class. We'll try and get another round of questions in, everybody. Hey, 3-4s.
Hello. Hold on a second. Edison, what's your question? Come a little closer, Edison, so they can hear you. Come closer. Come closer. What's your question, Edison? Quickly.
So, what would happen, like, if, like, all, like, the deer or moose and elk just, like, went away?
So we the opposite. We lose all the prey.
Yeah, that's a great question. So if we lost all the main food the cougars eat, well, there wouldn't be enough food to support cougars. So the cougars would start to go a bit hungry. But like I mentioned before, cougars do eat a lot of different prey. So what we would probably see is that cougars would have to eat a lot of beavers, a lot of porcupines, a lot of snowshoe hares just to stay alive and keep moving and reproduce. So if we lost all the big ticket items that they like to eat, they would have to eat a lot of other little small things for sure.
I used to eat a lot of chicken and steaks, and then I married a vegetarian. Now I eat lentils and beans. I went for all the smaller things, the beaver equivalent for the cougars. Riverbend Colony, we'll go back to Manitoba if you want to come back in.
Who wants to come ask that? We do have a question. Okay, Hannah, come here. Okay, you ask the question. Yep.
Do they go around in groups or they do hunt alone?
Could you repeat that for us? Sorry.
Yeah, she asked, do they hunt alone or live alone, or do they travel in packs? Like, is it just the mom and her kittens, or are there more of them that live with?
Nice question.
I heard, do they hunt alone or is it in groups? Is that the question?
Yeah, in groups. Basically, yes.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so interesting. In North America, cougars, they're considered solitary predators. The moms will do a lot of the hunting if they have kittens with them, because the kittens haven't learned yet how to hunt. But they don't hunt in groups. They just do it on their own for the most part. And the moms do all this work feeding their young. So they kill most of the things. And then even when their teenagers are there, the teenagers, they come in and just eat the food that mom brings home. But if you go to Patagonia, and there's a cool documentary with Barack Obama narrating, those Patagonian cougars live in these bigger groups, and they live more like almost lions in Africa. It's really interesting to see the differences between North America and South America.
Yes, I love when animal groups develop like a culture, like there's differences based on the location that they're in. It's such a rare thing, and it's so fascinating. All right, 2 more questions, folks. We're going to go back to Miss Beckers and then wrap up at St. Cecile in a second. Come on back in, Miss Becker. Hey. Oh, unmute though. There you go.
My name is Daniel. How deep is the den where cougars live?
Ooh, good question.
How deep is
the
it?
den? Yeah, where they live. Do they dig down like 10 feet? Is it just under the soil? What's the deal?
Oh, good question. So it's not under the soil. It's usually under a bunch of branches and logs. But I did go up to a den in the winter. Usually they give birth in the summer, but sometimes it's in the winter. And this fall I went in, I think in November, and hiked up a snowy mountain. A cougar had given birth in the snow. And what she did was she dug out a hole in the snow through a bunch of vegetation and made this kind of snow cave. And we went in and we reached our hands in, and the kittens were inside all nice and warm. So in the winter, it's really cool. It's like under a little cave. And in the summer, they're a little bit more open. Yeah.
Fascinating biologist, I'm telling you. Siobhan, we have time for one more question, and then I'm going to highlight some cool links for people to keep the learning going. But St. Cecile grade 4s, come on back in. Surprise me again.
Why did you choose to study cougars?
Why cougars, Siobhan? What's the deal?
Oh, man. Cougars are the coolest animal there is. It's my dream since I was a little girl to study cats, and I never imagined I can study big wild cats here in BC, but here we are. So they're just really fascinating. They're so sneaky, and they're just like your cat at home. When I watch them on the cameras, they'll dig litter boxes, they'll cover up their poops just like cats do. They roll around, they lick each other. We see a lot of the same behaviors in the big cats as we do with our cats at home. So they're just really special to me.
They are. You should all find something in your life that you're as passionate as Siobhan is about cougars. They're a really special animal, and this is an amazing presentation. Thank you so much for walking us through, highlighting all the incredible work that you get to do. As you highlighted at the end of the talk, if you want to check out more about the work that you do, I'll send this to all our registered classes, so you can stay tuned in your inbox for that. And of course, we've got a few more programs coming up the next week and a half. If you want to hang out with Jill Heinrich tomorrow, one of my other favorite speakers, We've got literally like all my favorite speakers in the next little week. So very, very exciting. Do check that out. All part of our Explore Can Series. Siobhan, what we do to wrap up every broadcast, I'm going to bring in all our teachers and say a big thank you and farewell. Riverbend Colony, Miss Becker, St. Cecile, Miss Gonzalez, unmute your mics. Come on in. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.